Right now, a single naval deployment is threatening to fundamentally realign the price of global energy. The British Ministry of Defence has dispatched the Type 45 guided missile destroyer, HMS Dragon, to the Middle East. Ostensibly, its mission is defensive, to join a potential UK-France multinational coalition aimed at restoring the free flow of shipping through the world's most critical maritime bottleneck. But as this advanced warship moves into position, Tehran has delivered an explicit, chilling ultimatum. The Iranian armed forces announced that any British or French warships patrolling under the pretext of protecting shipping or coordinating with U.S.-led operations will face immediate and direct military retaliation. This is not just another standard diplomatic standoff. It is a structural friction point in the global economy, where the enforcement of maritime law directly collides with regional sovereignty. If the British warship enters these waters, it risks triggering an asymmetric war. If it backs down, the international system governing global trade suffers a historic defeat. The unresolved question is whether Western powers can actually protect the global economy without inadvertently starting a war that destroys it. To understand how a single British vessel can carry such geopolitical weight, one must look at the unique mechanics of the global maritime transit system. Over 80% of global trade by volume moves by sea. The entire architecture of modern consumer capitalism relies on the assumption that the oceans are a neutral, universally accessible highway. This principle, known as the freedom of navigation, is not a natural state of affairs. It is an artificially maintained legal and military framework. Under international maritime treaties, specifically the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, states are granted sovereign rights over territory extending 12 nautical miles from their coastlines. However, when these territorial waters overlap in narrow straits used for international navigation, a special legal regime applies, known as transit passage. This allows foreign vessels, including warships, the right to continuous and expeditious navigation. The Strait of Hormuz is the ultimate stress test for this legal framework. At its narrowest point, the shipping lanes are only 2 miles wide, completely encompassed by the territorial waters of Iran and Oman. This means that every commercial supertanker and every Western warship passing through the strait is legally operating within an area where local powers claim sovereign security authority. When the global economy was constructed in the mid-20th century, Western policymakers assumed that the sheer dominance of international law and naval power would permanently guarantee access to these choke points. This assumption is now collapsing. The modern crisis in the strait did not emerge overnight. It is the direct result of a long-term shift in military technology and economic leverage. Decades ago, controlling a maritime choke point required a massive conventional blue water navy. Western powers, led by the United States and supported by the British Royal Navy, possessed uncontested dominance over the world's oceans. Iran recognized this conventional asymmetry and chose a completely different path. Rather than building expensive destroyers or aircraft carriers that could easily be destroyed by Western technology, Tehran invested heavily in asymmetric denial capabilities. They developed vast stockpiles of anti-ship cruise missiles, low-cost loitering munitions, autonomous naval mines, and fleets of highly maneuverable fast-attack craft. The economic incentives shifted dramatically. Today it costs millions of dollars to manufacture a single air defense missile used by a Western destroyer like HMS Dragon. Conversely, it costs only a fraction of that amount to deploy an underwater mine or launch a swarm of drones. Iran realized that it did not need to defeat a Western Navy in a conventional battle. It only needed to make the cost of transit unacceptably high for commercial insurers. When regional hostilities escalated earlier this year, the economic vulnerability of this corridor became clear. The shipping lanes are effectively closed, halting the movement of roughly 20% of the world's petroleum and liquefied natural gas. The current British deployment is an attempt to reverse this reality by projecting conventional naval power back into a space defined by asymmetric threats. The actual mechanism of this confrontation functions like a high-stakes chess match, played out over a few square miles of water. The British strategy relies on sophisticated technological defense. HMS Dragon is equipped with the Sea Viper missile system, designed to track and intercept multiple high-speed aerial threats simultaneously. The UK package also includes advanced autonomous mine-hunting equipment and modular drone boats designed to clear underwater hazards. The goal is to create a secure, heavily defended corridor through which commercial shipping can safely pass. Iran's counter-strategy relies entirely on geographic advantage and volume. Because the shipping lanes sit directly beneath Iranian coastal cliffs, Tehran can launch land-based anti-ship systems with virtually zero warning time. The Iranian military views the arrival of foreign warships as an illegal militarization of their immediate perimeter. From Tehran's perspective, the security of the strait is their sovereign responsibility, and the introduction of a multinational coalition is an attempt to enforce a Western economic order through intimidation. The operational reality is that no matter how advanced a Type 45 destroyer is, its defensive systems can theoretically be saturated if faced with a synchronized assault involving land-based ballistic missiles, low-cost aerial drones, and swarming naval craft simultaneously. The consequences of a miscalculation in this environment extend far beyond the immediate military losses. The primary economic losers in a prolonged standoff are ordinary consumers worldwide. When a vital energy choke point is threatened, international shipping registries alter their routes or halt transits entirely. For corporations, this triggers an immediate spike in maritime insurance premiums, often rising by hundreds of % in a matter of days. These increased operating costs are directly passed down the supply chain, manifesting as higher fuel prices at the pump and increased manufacturing costs for goods globally. For governments, the stakes are existential. Western administrations face intense domestic political pressure to curb inflation and secure energy supplies. Yet a direct military clash could cause a systemic shock to global markets, driving energy prices to unprecedented highs. The economic winners, conversely, are alternative energy exporters located outside the conflict zone who can command premium prices for their resources, alongside state actors who benefit from the strategic diversion of Western military focus away from other global theaters. There is a profound public misunderstanding regarding the nature of maritime security in the Strait of Hormuz. The common narrative portrays these naval deployments as standard police actions, suggesting that a Western warship can simply park in the waterway and act as a shield for commercial traffic. This view completely misunderstands the operational reality of modern naval warfare. A warship like HMS Dragon does not act as a passive shield. It is a high-value target. Its presence does not automatically deter an adversary that has spent 30 years optimizing its forces specifically to sink that exact type of vessel. Furthermore, the public often conflates the legal right to transit passage with physical security. International law is not self-executing. It only exists as long as the dominant powers have the political will and physical capability to enforce it. When a regional power openly defies that law with credible military force, the legal text becomes irrelevant, replaced entirely by the raw physics of anti-ship missiles and air defense radars. As the deployment proceeds, the international system faces a few realistic future scenarios. The first outcome is a fragile, armed deterrence. In this situation, the British warship and its coalition partners maintain a persistent presence just outside the high-threat zone, conducting limited escorts without directly entering disputed waters. This scenario requires absolute operational restraint from both sides, keeping the strait technically functional but highly volatile and economically strained. A second outcome is an unintended escalatory spiral. A single drone launch, an errant sea mine, or a misinterpreted radar signal could trigger a defensive live-fire response from HMS Dragon. Under Iran's explicit ultimatum, this would necessitate an immediate conventional counterstrike against British assets, effectively shifting the situation from a maritime security crisis into an open, regional naval war that completely freezes the transit of global energy.